Right now, I want to welcome to the program Gabby Hoffman, media strategist extraordinaire, is with us on the program on Twitter at Gabby_Hoffman. Gabby, how are you today?
Cam, always good to be back on. How are you?
I am good. I appreciate you joining us on the program. And, it's an interesting article that you've got at The Hill. Gun control, a sure way to hurt conservation efforts. And I like the unique approach to this, Gabby, because clearly, we can present the facts about the effectiveness or the ineffectiveness of gun control. We can talk about self-defense being a human right. There are going to be some folks out there who will just stick their fingers in their ears, la, 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 la. They don't want to hear it. This is kind of another angle to take to get people to start thinking about gun control, right? Because we all love animals. We're all animal lovers. We love wildlife. We want to conserve the beauty of Mother Nature. And if you're declaring war on legal gun ownership, not only are you impacting our rights, but you're also going to be impacting the world that we live in.
Exactly. I mean, we're seeing it take form in Oregon and a few other states where they're classifying semi-automatic rifles, which are used for basic hunting trips, as assault weapons. Therefore, all these attacks leveled at firearms. People don't understand that not only does it go after individual rights, it has this consequence, a very dire consequence of going after conservation funding, of which firearms contribute, much like fishing tackle licenses and other goods that are taxed for what you purchase, as to what excise taxes are, and bows and archery. That comprises 60% of conservation funding, and hikers and campers, God love them, they don't contribute that much, and their goods that they use for those activities are not taxed in that fashion, going back to conservation efforts. So I think the part of the reason for me writing this piece was I was just kind of on a whim, but I figured, with gun control being a hot topic issue, I think approaching a new angle as to what devastating consequence it could have, especially with hunting on the decline and conservation funding always being threatened, I think it's a unique approach, and people don't understand the significance that firearms purchases play, especially when excise taxes derived from them are involved.
Well, absolutely. And I do think that if nothing else, it perhaps provides a bit of a wake-up call to individuals out there who don't realize that the Pittman-Robertson excise tax exists and what the money is actually used for.
Yes.
My only concern, Gabby, is that anti-gun advocates read this piece and they say, oh, so there's an excise tax on firearms and ammunition. Why don't we jack that up? Gabby, we could save the environment even more than we're doing now if we just doubled the excise tax on firearms and ammunition. Thanks, Gabby. I am a little concerned about that, to be honest.
Well, it's not like a traditional tax that's typically levied for like income. I mean, it's already at an 11% rate. I'm not sure. I don't want to be in that conversation of whether or not to levy more on excise taxes. But again, they're going to take it from the line of high taxation policy that our opponents typically promote. But again, excise taxes are very different, and I'm not sure if levying more is going to help with conservation funding. I don't think doubling it to 22%. I don't think that's realistic. But they can complain, and people have already been commenting on the article saying, well, yeah, why don't we levy more taxes on it? But again, they don't understand the whole process that goes into it. It's not just firearms. It's fishing tackle or any other fishing equipment. It'd be bows and archery and so much more. And there are other ways that state wildlife agencies are getting their funding from help from nonprofit organizations and that whole exchange and that ecosystem there. And it's unique, but they can't really complain about hunters and anglers when they're not footing the bill for conservation themselves. Whether they're paying into it, joining organizations which put back money towards conservation efforts, they can complain online and they can decry how evil hunters and other conservationists are for living out their lifestyle, a tradition that has at least been actively in this country since its inception. But certainly, I think conservation and hunting in terms of conservation was taken more seriously in the late 1800s when the North American wildlife conservation model was established. And that's why we see hunters and anglers and shooting sports enthusiasts contributing roughly 60% of funds from excise taxes back, because they wanted to not deplete wildlife and habitats. That's why organizations like Ducks Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Delta Waterfowl, Safari Club, and many others exist, because they recognize that when people hunt more than their lot, and if they don't practice stewardship, you're going to not see that wildlife in future generations. And through the contributions of hunters, We see more ducks, more wild turkeys, more white-tailed deer. In fact, too much white-tailed deer in Northern Virginia. But we see regeneration of species because hunters have put their money where their mouth is, and they are not simply just taking wildlife. They're supporting banquets. They're joining organizations, pumping back money through those organizations to their state wildlife agencies with purchases and purchases on equipment and licenses as well. So there's a whole cycle, and hunters do contribute, and that stigma has to be demystified. And I hope this article, from this unique lens, I was told that it's very awful topic to write about, but it was interesting. I'm happy to rock the boat in this, to present conservation in a new light, because people don't understand when gun sales plummet and when you see fewer firearms being purchased, you're going to see less of that revenue for conservation funding go back towards those efforts to protect wildlife and habitat. And I think it's a unique look, and some hunters in our industry may not agree with us, because there are some that do support gun control, unfortunately, and maybe we'll get them to bend a little bit or to understand our perspective more. But I think even those hunters who claim to support gun control will have to take a step back and say, well, if we support this, the funding source for our activities can be diminished exponentially.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Talking again with Gabby Hoffman, media strategist, her latest piece at The Hill. And, I want to go back to something that you said, Gabby, talking about the development of the North American game management model in the late 1800s. Yes. And I think that you're right. I think that was probably a bigger topic for more Americans, even those who weren't hunters. Because back then, you had the news stories of the herds of buffalo that were, just being slaughtered all along the American prairie. You could see the effects. You could see the animals disappearing. Well, we live in a day and age where, again, we've had now, more than 100 years of that North American game management model in effect. And we're bringing species back from the brink, right? You mentioned the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. So we've got elk now in Virginia. There was a story in the Roanoke newspaper last year. They tried for more than 100 years to bring the elk back from extinction in Virginia, and then they started working with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and lo and behold, now we've got several hundred elk in southwestern Virginia. But we are living, I think, right, but we're living with the benefits of this model. And so we don't, I think we take a lot for granted, particularly if you're not a hunter. If you're just an animal lover and a wildlife lover, you just assume that, okay, so maybe this bad things happened in the 70s with pollution, but we got the EPA and we fixed everything. No. That's not the story, right? The story, as you describe it, really is the nation's hunters and anglers and outdoorsmen and women who have provided that financial backing to bring these species back from the brink. And you're right. If those men and women are now being targeted, if they're being told that they're cruel for wanting to go hunting and they're cruel for going to fish, and we got to do everything we can to try to shut down these opportunities, yes, humans will pay, right? We'll lose out on these experiences, but the environment's going to lose out, and these animals are going to lose out too.
Yeah, I think this is how we can kind of take back environmentalism. I think hunters and anglers are true conservationists, and true conservation embodies protecting the environment. Whenever I go fishing, I dislike it when I see trash everywhere. And now that I've started hunting and I see leftover shells or trash, it's a disquieting sight to see. I don't think anyone wants the environment to be harmed, or we want waterways to be polluted. I just think that the approach it's taken, and especially the attack on hunters, and I think the Department of Interior has certainly reversed course on this under Secretary Zinke. They're trying to bridge the gap that hunters and anglers can be environmentalists and conservationists without using the purse and pull of big government influences. And I think that's how it has to be going forward, especially in terms of promoting in the environment. And like you said, hunters and anglers do promote the environment. They promote restoration of habitats. I subscribe, and I'm a member of Ducks Unlimited. I get the magazine every year, and all of us who go duck hunting or who have started to go duck hunting pay for that federal stamp. We pay for the Virginia stamp or your individual state stamp, and I read through that, and they talk so much about how DU dollars are going back to support those habitats and those wetlands. And the Department of Interior has also improved access for on national federal wildlife refuges that are all over the country, and there was just an expansive effort to allow those opportunities there. And just because there's more access, it doesn't mean those habitats or even the wildlife that live in those habitats are going to be depleted. I think most law-abiding hunters and even shooting sports enthusiasts are cognizant of the laws. We don't want to waste away or kill more than our lot, or even destroy or hurt the environment or hurt the habitat for which we traverse if we go fishing or hunting. And I think this dialogue is going to continue to be had. And again, firearms play a critical role. A lot of people malign firearms in the industry that we work with, especially those who contrast or oppose our lifestyle. And I think not every mainstream outlet is ignoring this. I think NPR had a very good piece about the decline of hunters and what that means for conservation earlier this year in March. So I think mainstream outlets, especially The Hill, allowing someone like me to publish opinion pieces like that, and even just NPR and other publications highlighting the contributions hunters play. I think the message is starting to resonate with people slowly but surely. But we all need to find ways to communicate the stories that hunters and anglers and other shooting sports enthusiasts have, and just kind of reverse course. I think it can be done. It's a hurdle, but I'll do whatever small part I can to do that, and I hope others do too.
Well, I appreciate you writing the piece, Gabby. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's good talking with you.
Same with you, Cam. Hopefully we'll go fishing on the James River soon.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Yes, I would love to get a chance to do that at some point this summer. Gabby Hoffman joining us here on Cam and Company. I certainly will. Thank you very much. Gabby, join us here on the program.